This is a science marathon class based on new syllabus for Karnataka TET 2025. Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Unfog with Dr. Atahar Parveen. Friends, we were getting so many messages in YouTube, in Telegram, in WhatsApp and in Gmail from you all that madam please take a marathon class for a science part in TET. So considering your so many requests, we have taken out time now to make this marathon class and help you all qualify TET this time. Keeping in mind the previous year question paper of TET, what level of difficulty level was there. Keeping that in mind, we have done lot of research and we have bought 50 most expected questions from science part for TET. So if you are a serious aspirant who is really interested in writing exam this time very seriously and qualifying TET, then this class is for you, because you never know, in exam you may also get some same questions which we are discussing in this class. Okay, so after watching this class and preparing, when your exam is done, you come back and tell us in the comment section of this video or in Telegram channel or in Gmail related to whether this class really helped you or no. Okay, so this has happened previously also many times. So many of our questions which we have discussed in our YouTube channel in free classes and in paid classes, many questions which we discussed come in exam always, and aspirants come to us after exam and they thank us, they are grateful to us that we have discussed those questions in our classes, because those similar questions have come in the exam. And this time also I am expecting many questions from this class to be expected in TET this time. So you all should watch this class completely and try to focus on these questions which we will be discussing, because we will discuss answers to all questions in the shortest possible manner. We will discuss what each option means, and we will also tell you how to solve that particular type of a question in the exam by saving the time. Okay, so before starting the class, I want to remind you all to subscribe this channel and share this video among all your friends and other aspirants, and help others also in qualifying TET this time, because science is the major portion in the TET. In fact, it is having 30 questions only, but why I am telling major portion? Because the syllabus is such. Okay, as per the new syllabus, if you think of it, no, the syllabus is very vast. So that's why it has become a major concentration part in TET this time. Okay, so let us start the class without wasting the time. So here is the first question of this marathon class. First we will be discussing all questions from physics, then we will go to chemistry, then we will go to biology, and in the end again I will give you a list of most expected questions from entire science. Okay, so this question is from optics actually. So the question is, when an opaque object comes in the way of a light, it makes a, and four options are shadow, rainbow, image, mirage. See, light actually travels in a straight line, right? So that is the speciality of light, right? It travels in a straight line. So when an opaque object blocks light, what actually happens means the light will not be able to pass through it, right? See, what is a opaque object? Opaque object means light cannot pass through that object. Okay, transparent means light can pass through that object, and translucent means light can partially pass through that object. Okay, so the best example for an opaque object can be a balloon. So light cannot pass through it. So here, if the light is not able to pass through it, what will happen? That much of area, it will be like a dark region, right? So because light is not falling on that particular object, so there will be a dark region which is formed behind that object. That object is actually opaque object. That's why this dark region is formed. That region we call it as a shadow, right? So here shadow is formed. See the options. Shadow, option A. That one will be the correct answer here. But what about the other three options? What is a rainbow? Rainbow means 7 colors will be formed when there is raining, right? So usually after rain we get this rainbow in the sky. So this rainbow is occurring due to refraction and dispersion in the drops of the water. Those drops of the water play the role of a prism here. Then what is an image? Image means it is a very basic term, right? Image is the one which is formed by reflection and refraction in case of mirrors and lenses. But then what is the concept of mirage? Mirage means it is a illusion. It is formed due to optical illusion, which is again caused by refraction, and this usually occurs in desert because the optical illusion caused by refraction in hot air is only our mirage, right? So that happens in deserts. So now you know about all the other three options also, right? So this is the way you have to prepare for your exam. When you come across a question, try to know the correct answer and also try to know what are the other three options, because one question is always having 4 questions in it. That is what I always believe. Right. Now they can ask you a multiple choice question based on rainbow also, on image also, and on mirage also. But this particular question which we have discussed here is based on shadow. Okay. Now moving on to our next question. The question is, if the object is dropped from the top of a building and it reaches the ground at t is equal to 3 seconds, then the height of the building is, and they have given g is equal to 9.8 meter per second square in the bracket. They have given 4 options. Try to understand the question. The question is, if the object is dropped from the top of the building and it reaches the ground at t is equal to 3 seconds. You have to find out the height of the building. So you have to find out this. That is our question now, right? So whenever acceleration due to gravity comes into picture, you should understand that there is something related to height. Even though if they have not mentioned in the question, you should understand it, right? Now anyway, they have mentioned it in the question, so it becomes easy for us. We have a very famous formula related to distance traveled along with the initial velocity, acceleration due to gravity, and time. What is that formula? When you talk about acceleration due to gravity and distance, you should know that S is equal to ut plus half gt square. There are 2 more formulas which are very common formulas, right? V is equal to u plus at and v square is equal to u square minus 2as. Those also can be used wherever needed, but here because they are talking about the time, they are talking about acceleration due to gravity, and indirectly they have given us initial velocity also. That's why I am using this formula which is most suitable for this question. What is the initial velocity? Initial velocity here will be 0 because the story which has been started in the question says that the object is already dropped from the top, which means that the initial velocity would have been 0 only, right? So when the object is dropped from the top, it will have certain velocity that we have nothing to do with in this particular question, but initial velocity would be 0 only for any object which has a started moving. Obviously initial velocity would be 0, so the velocity would start from 0 to whatever the final velocity is, right? So now our question is, we have to find out the height of the building, which is nothing but the distance traveled by the object which is dropped from the top of the building, right? So this is our actually height of the building now. What about initial velocity? It is 0. What about time? Time they have given in the question is 3 seconds. So I will write 3 here. Plus half into acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 and time is again 3 seconds. So 3 square, right? So here this thing will become 0 for me, plus 2 into 2 4s are 8, 2 9s are 18. 4.9 into 9. So the height of the building is going to be 44.1 meter. So option B will be the correct answer here. See friends, explaining takes time because you have to understand the concept clearly. We try to explain in detail, okay, but once you practice and when you attempt, you will do it within no time, right? So in the exam, how you will do? You will not write all this like this. What you will do in the exam? You know that S is equal to ut plus half gt square. So what you will do? You will directly write h in your mind. You will put is equal to initial velocity is 0. So you will write it like this. You will write half into 9.8 into 9 directly, right? So now this thing also 2 ones are 2 4.9s are, and you will multiply 4.9 into 9 quickly and your answer will be ready there, okay? So one question from optics is done, one question from motion in a plane is done. Now let us see third question from electricity. So we have tried to take all the variety of questions from all possible chapters in entire of the science because we are focusing on new syllabus, right? So see this question. When n resistors of equal resistance R are connected in series and parallel, the ratio of effective resistance of series and parallel are. So what is the connectivity in series? Resistors, if they are connected like this, you say that they are connected in series. What about parallel? If they are connected like this, then you say that those resistors are connected in parallel. Correct, right? So we have a famous formula related to resistors in series and resistors in parallel. So if you have resistors connected in series, then your equivalent resistance will be equal to N times R. Like that only, if resistors are connected in parallel, then you write like this, right? Here they are talking about equal resistors. So that's why I am telling R, right? So here I have a 1 by Rn because they are connected in parallel. So now I have 1 by Rp is equal to N by R. So what will be the effective resistance now? Rp will be equal to R by N. Right? So now for series we know that effective resistance is NR and for parallel effective resistance is R by N. Clear, right? Now we have to find the ratio of effective resistance in series upon effective resistance in parallel. Right? So for series it is NR and for parallel it is R by N, which is going to be NR into N by R. Our R will get cancelled and we will have N square by 1, or our answer will be N square is to 1 because they are talking about ratio, and we will get option B as correct answer here. Okay, clear, right? So this way you have to focus on everything given in the question and find the correct answer. In case you forget to do the reciprocal here and do it with N by R, then your answer is going to become like this, NR into R by N. So NN will get cancelled and you will get R square is to 1, which is not there in the options. In case it is there in the options, then still you will get confused and your answer will be wrong there. Okay, understand my point, right? So you have to always be careful with the parallel resistors because you need to do reciprocal for the final answer here. Okay. Next question. Which of the following statements are false? Understand the question. You should find out the wrong statement from the given 4 statements here. First statement. In a rainy day, sound travels faster. Yes, it is true only because sound travels faster when air is moist. The reason is that we have the concept of density, right? So density is equal to mass upon volume, right? So for moist air, this density is less when compared to dry air. What is the main reason? We see in dry air the molecules will be heavy, right? Heavy molecules will be there because the water content will be less, right? In dry air. In moist air, water content will be more, right? So that's the reason why molecules will be lighter in moist air. Okay, so now you get my point, right? So in moist air, the molecules are lighter and water vapors are more. In dry air, molecules are heavy and water is less, right? Now density is depending upon mass upon volume. So for dry air, density should be more because here molecules are heavy. So density is directly proportional to mass. This thing you have to remember now. Okay. So as per our logic, in dry air there are heavy molecules and the density will be high. Right. And in moist air there will be more water content because of which the molecules will be lighter. So density will be less. So with this in mind, now read the options. First option is now true only, right? So it is true that in rainy day sound should travel faster. Then what about option B? In a moist air the water vapor quantity is less and density decreases. Now this one should be false, right? Why? Because in moist air water quantity is more, we told, right? And density is less, we told, right? So it is false. What about option 3? In dry air, water vapor quantity is more and density increases. This is also false, right? Because what we told, in dry air, water vapor quantity is less. That's the reason why our molecules are heavy and density is increasing. So this part is correct, that density is increasing, but water vapor quantity is less. So that's why third statement is also false. Then see the statement in option D. In a moist air, the water vapor quantity is more and density decreases. So this is this situation, right? So this is also true. So basically statement 1 is true and statement D is true. So which option should be correct here? See, which of the following statements are false? Right? So these two are false, B and C. So option B will be the correct answer here. Okay, so these are all logics you should understand. You don't need to spend so much time the way I spent. I told you the concept. I discussed everything. Why in moist air water quantity is more and density is less. Why in dry air water quantity is less and density is more. That story I have explained you. Now you should know the logic behind everything, and any question based on this concept you will be able to answer them. Okay. Now let us move towards another different chapter with a different question. A circular leveled road of radius 10 meter having coefficient of static friction 0.64. 3 cars A, B and C are travelling with speed 5 meter per second, 14 meter per second and 7 meter per second respectively. Which car will skid when it moves in a circular level road? So here the question is related to centripetal force, because they are talking about a circular leveled road and that road is having radius 10 meter and the coefficient of friction value they have given, which is 0.64, and they are telling that 3 cars are traveling in that circular leveled road and 3 cars are having different speeds. Now we should find out which car will skid when it is moving in a circular level road. For that first you have to find the safe velocity, right? Which will be the safe velocity means that one will not skid, right? So to move safely in a circular path, centripetal force must be provided by friction, right? Now what is the formula related to friction, velocity and radius of the road? We have mu into G is equal to V square by R. What is mu? It is the static friction given here. What is G? It is a 9.8 meter per second square or I can take it as 10 meter per second square as it is given in the question. And velocities they have given for 3 cars and radius is 10 meter for that road, right? So now when a car is turning, we always feel that like we are being thrown outward in that car, right? I am talking about the circular road. But we are not thrown outward because friction between tires and roads is holding the car on the road, right? So friction is actually acting like a friend who is saving us from getting thrown outward. So if friction is strong enough means car will stay safely on the road, and friction is not enough means the car will skid or slide outwards, right? So first let me find out the maximum velocity, which is a safe velocity, right? So with the above formula, I can say that V maximum or V square maximum is equal to mu gr, or V maximum is equal to square root of mu gr, right? So talking about car A, it is a 5 meter per second, right? So let me first calculate the values here and find out V maximum. So this is equal to square root of 0.64 into 10 into 10. So this is going to be equal to square root of 64 or 8 meter per second. Now this 8 meter per second is the safe speed. So if the car is traveling with velocity more than 8 meter per second, then it will skid, right? For car A, we have 5 meter per second. So this is less than 8 meter per second, right? For car B, we have 14 meter per second. So this is greater than 8 meter per second, right? For car C, it is 7 meter per second, which is also less than 8 meter per second. So which car is going safely? Car A is going safely, right? And which car is going to skid? For sure, car B, because it is going with a very high speed when compared to the safe velocity, right? So car B will be the correct answer here. It is going to skid when it is moving in a circular level road. Okay. Next question. Conditions to achieve total internal reflection between air and water. So here 4 statements are given, and below those 4 statements 4 options are given. You should find out among these 4 statements which are the conditions to achieve total internal reflection between water and air. So if you see the options, you will understand that among the 4 statements there are 2 statements which are the conditions to achieve total internal reflection. Okay, so here either it is A and C, or B and D, or A and D, or B and C. Okay, so first condition is light must travel from water to air. Okay, because total internal reflection occurs when light is traveling from denser medium to rarer medium, right? Denser to rarer means this is a correct condition only. Light must travel from water to air. Second one is light must travel from air to water. No, because rarer to denser it will become, right? So total internal reflection actually occurs when light is traveling from denser to a rarer medium, that is water to air. And another important condition of total internal reflection is that angle of incidence should be greater than critical angle. It should be greater than critical angle. Then only the light will reflect back fully. There will be no refraction there. Okay, so angle of incidence should be greater than critical angle. So it is option C. That is also correct condition. Option D will be wrong because here they are talking about it should be less than that of critical angle. So this is wrong. So statement A and statement C are correct ones. So option A will be the correct answer here. Okay. Next question. Which one of the following is not an electromagnetic wave? So we have an electromagnetic wave spectrum, right? In that spectrum, there is one option given among these 4 which is not belonging to that spectrum. So microwave, yes, it will belong to electromagnetic wave. Infrared rays, yes. X-rays, yes, they belong to electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so option 1, 3 and 4, they belong to electromagnetic spectrum. But what about option 2? Option 2 is ultrasonic. Where did we hear this word ultrasonic? We heard this word ultrasonic waves in chapter of sounds. So ultrasonic waves are actually mechanical sound waves and they require a material medium to travel. Right. So best example for ultrasonic waves are sound waves. They need medium to travel. What is the speciality of electromagnetic waves? They can travel in vacuum. They don't need the material medium to travel, right? So microwaves, infrared waves and X-rays can travel in vacuum. Ultrasonic waves cannot travel in vacuum. They need material medium to travel and they are actually mechanical sound waves. Okay, so which one is the correct answer for this question? Which is not an electromagnetic wave? Option 2, ultrasonic. So for this question, these are wrong options. Okay, clear, right? Next question. Kirchhoff's current law is based on the conservation of. This is a very important question. Kirchhoff's current law is based on conservation of mass, charge, none of these momentum. See, actually Kirchhoff's current law or KCL, it states that the algebraic sum of currents which are entering at a node or at a junction will be equal to sum of the currents which are leaving that particular node or that junction. See, for example, there is one node or there is one junction. Okay. Now there are some currents coming to this junction. Maybe some 3 currents are coming to this junction. Let those 3 currents be I1, I2 and I3. And there are 2 currents which are going out of this junction. This and this, they are going out. Okay. So let on this be I4 and this one will be I5. So according to this KCL or Kirchhoff's current law, I1 plus I2 plus I3 is equal to I4 plus I5, right? Or I1 plus I2 plus I3 minus I4 minus I5 is equal to 0. So the algebraic sum of currents entering the junction is equal to the sum of currents leaving the junction. Okay. Now with this equation only we can say that electric charge is conserved, right? So the electric charge cannot be created or destroyed at a junction or at a node. So remember, electric charge is conserved. So option 2 will be the correct answer here. Okay. So remember, Kirchhoff's current law says that current entering the node is equal to current leaving the node. Next question. The kinetic energy of a particle having mass m is E. Its momentum will be. So here they are telling that kinetic energy is denoted by E and mass is denoted by m. So what will be the momentum? So what is usually momentum denoted by? It is denoted by P, right? And what is the formula for momentum? It is mass into velocity, right? But then there is another formula related to momentum and kinetic energy. So E is equal to P square by 2m, where P is momentum and m is mass. So with this, what will be our momentum value? It will be P square is equal to 2me or P is equal to square root of 2me. So here if you see in options, option 3 will be the correct answer here, square root of 2me. So remember, momentum is equal to square root of 2me also, and momentum is equal to mass into velocity also. Next question. In medium, the nature of sound waves is. So the nature of sound waves is always longitudinal. Remember this. Sound waves means longitudinal mechanical waves. So in any medium, it is solid, liquid, gas, sound waves travel because of compression and rarefaction, and this leads to the nature of the sound waves to be longitudinal. Remember this, very important question. So here option 4, only longitudinal, will be the correct answer. Next question. The value of 1 angstrom is, see, the value of 1 angstrom is actually equal to 10 to the power minus 10 meter. Next question. The speed of sound wave is maximum in, so the options are air, steel, vacuum, water. See, actually speed of sound is highest in solids, then in liquids, then it is lowest in gases, right? So this is a gas, this is a solid. Vacuum though, I mean not possible only, but let us say it is a very much lesser, and water is liquid. Okay, now what did I say? How is the speed of sound varying? It is highest in solids, right? This is highest. Then we have water. I can say like this: solids, then liquids, then gas, then vacuum. Okay, now which is a solid here? Steel, right? Then what is liquid here? Water, right? Then we have air, then we have vacuum. So which is the speed of sound maximum here? In steel. Option B will be the correct answer here. Okay. Next question. Gases produced during lightning are, so here they are telling oxygen, O3 or NO. Now what is this O3? It is a ozone. Okay, so actually what happens during lightning means there is extremely high temperature, right? Now because of this extreme high temperature, nitrogen and oxygen which are present in the air, they react together to form nitric oxide. So nitrogen and oxygen, they react together to form a nitric oxide. So 2 is written to balance this chemical equation. Now this nitric oxide actually further gets oxidized with the presence of oxygen, and you will get NO2. So to balance it, I have to write 2 here. So this NO2 is actually nitrogen oxide, right? So here for us correct answer should be option A only, right? So if you see the options, here also option A, 1 alone. Okay, or it should be like this here. I'll correct it. A and B, A and C, A and D. So our correct answer is A alone. Next question. Solar radiation per unit area received at the outer limit of atmosphere is known as. Now this is an important question. We have seen this type of question in 2024 Karnataka TET question paper. So solar radiation per unit area received at the outer limit of atmosphere is actually known as a solar constant. It is the amount of solar radiation received per unit area per unit time on a surface perpendicular to sun's rays outside the Earth's atmosphere. The solar constant value is approximately equal to 1367 watt per meter square, or if in calories, if you see, it is 1.94 per calorie per centimeter square per minute. So in the exam they have asked this. It was like this 1.4 megawatt per meter square. Something like this was there. Okay, they asked the constant value. Now what about the other options? Insolation. Insolation means it is actually referring to the solar energy that actually reaches the earth's surface after passing through the atmosphere. Here another term, heat budget, is given in the options, right? So this heat budget is actually balance between total heat energy received by earth and total heat energy that leaves it through radiation. So that maintenance of the balance between the heat energy coming in, that is received in, and left in, that is known as heat budget. Next question. The main atmospheric layer near the surface of the earth is. Now there are many layers in the atmosphere, right? Like we have a troposphere, mesosphere, ionosphere and stratosphere. So I am giving you figure also here. So the nearest layer is the troposphere, then comes the ozone layer, then comes the stratosphere, then comes the mesosphere, thermosphere and exosphere, right? So the main atmospheric layer near the surface of the earth is troposphere. Okay. There can be many different type of questions based on this, like where do flights fly, in which region, it is in stratosphere. Where do the satellites fly, it is a thermosphere, like that. And where do comets occur, it is mesosphere. So all this you should be knowing. So these were the physics questions we discussed till now. Now let us start with the chemistry question. We will get back to physics questions in the end of the class. Okay. So first chemistry question. Acid rain is concerned with the presence of. So how is it actually concerned? It is concerned with the acid given in the four options. Either it is hydrochloric acid, boric acid, acetic acid or sulfuric acid. See, actually acid rain is mainly caused by sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. Sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. These gases actually they react with water vapor in the atmosphere, and after reacting with the water vapor, what does the actually form means sulfuric acid H2SO4 and nitric acid is formed HNO3 when they react with water. Okay, now in rain, I mean in acid rain, sulfuric acid H2SO4 and HNO3 is falling like acid rain. So here we have HNO3 and H2SO4. In the options there is H2SO4, so option D will be the correct answer here. Next question. Which represents calcination? They are given 4 chemical reactions here, and which chemical reaction is representing calcination they are telling. See, calcination means it is the process of heating a carbonate or hydroxide ore in the absence of air. How much heat means very strong heat is given in the absence of air to convert that carbonate or hydroxide into oxide, and carbon dioxide or water is released in this process. Magnesium carbonate, which is strongly heated in the absence of air, you will get magnesium oxide and carbon dioxide is released. So option 3 will be the correct answer here. But what about the other chemical reactions? See here, zinc and oxygen is giving zinc oxide, and in option 2 also oxygen is present. So option 1 and 2 are actually we can call as a process of heating in presence of oxygen. So process of heating in presence of oxygen is called as roasting. What about option 4? Here also oxygen is present, but silver along with hydrochloric acid is there. It is actually representing oxidation reaction. Okay. So here for this question, calcination example is option 3, which is the correct answer. Next, question number 18. Which colorless gas turns lead acetate paper black? So here actually if you see the options, we have hydrogen sulfide, bromine, sulfur dioxide and chlorine, which is Br2, SO2 and Cl2. Hydrogen sulfide actually should be the correct answer here, because the hydrogen sulfide reacts with the lead acetate. So lead acetate means it should be actually Pb CH3COO twice, right? So this hydrogen sulfide reacts with lead acetate and it gives lead sulfide. It is black in color, along with acetic acid. What is acetic acid formula? CH3COOH, right? So this is acetic acid and this is our lead sulfide, PBS, which is actually a paper black. So H2S is the correct answer here. Next, question number 19. Consider the following compounds: BF3, IF7, CO2, PCl5. Among these compounds, the electrophiles are, so you have to choose the electrophiles here. So what are electrophiles actually? Electrophiles are those type of compounds which are electron deficient species are having in that, and they accept electron pairs because they don't have enough electrons in them, around them. So that's why they are very hungry for electrons. So that's why they are accepting electron pairs. Now talking about the first one, BF3, boron trifluoride. See, actually boron is having 6 electrons in its valence shell, but a balanced valence shell needs 8, right? So it is electrophile because it is hungry for the electrons. So that's why option 1, BF3 is a electrophile. Talking about IF7, this is iodine heptafluoride and this is surrounded by many electronegative fluorine atoms. So fluorine pulls electrons from iodine, so that's why it is also electron deficient. So IF7, iodine heptafluoride, is also electrophile. Then we have carbon dioxide. In carbon dioxide, carbon is having positive charge, so oxygen pulls electrons and carbon needs electrons also, so that's why it is always hungry for the electrons. So it is also electrophile. Talking about PCl5, it is phosphorus pentachloride. Here chlorine atoms are there, right? So they always pull electrons from phosphor. So there are deficiency of electrons in phosphor, right? That phosphorus. So phosphorus becomes again hungry for the electrons and it wants electrons. So it is also electrophile. So all the 4 options are electrophiles here. So option 3 should be the correct answer here. Okay. Next question. On coming down the group in the periodic table, the value of electronegativity decreases, atomic radius increases, value of ionization enthalpy decreases. So we have made one free class based on periodic table. If you have watched that class, then you will be knowing the answer perfectly to this question. Actually, all the 3 statements which are given are true for the periodic table when we go down the group. So the value of electronegativity decreases, atomic radius increases, and value of ionization enthalpy decreases. Okay, so electronegativity decreases down the group, I am telling. Atomic radius increases and ionization enthalpy decreases. So option 3 should be the correct answer here. Next question. The number of moles of 52 gram of helium is, so molar mass of helium is 4 gram they are telling, and they are telling you to find out the number of moles of 52 grams of helium. Actually we have that formula, right? Number of moles is equal to given mass by molar mass, right? So what is the given mass here? 52. What is the molar mass they are telling for helium? It is 4 gram. So we should have 13. Number of moles is 13. Option A will be the correct answer here. Okay. Next question. Which of the following sets of quantum numbers is possible? Very important question. Which of the following sets of quantum numbers is possible? Now what is this n? N is a principal quantum number, right? Principal quantum number. This n value is always starting from 1 and it will goes up, and there is no 0 in n, in principal quantum number. Then we have a azimuthal quantum number. Azimuthal quantum number is L, and this value should range from 0 to n minus 1. Then we have M, magnetic quantum number. Magnetic quantum number M, its value is always ranging from minus L to plus L. Right. So now see the options. Option 1 will be wrong because n cannot be 0. Option C will be wrong because n cannot be 0. Now see option B and option D. N can be 1. If n is 1, then what will be L value? So if n is equal to 1, L can be 0 and M will be 0 only, right? So in case you want to check with option D also, that is also not going to be true. So option B will be the correct answer here. Next question. Match the following. Solid, foam, emulsion, foam, gel. All the 4 options are there in first row, and then examples: cream, cork, cheese, froths of air they are telling. We need to choose the correct ones and match the following. See, solid foam is dispersed in solid medium and the cork is made. So this should go till here. Okay. Then emulsion is a liquid dispersed in another liquid, so it should be cream. Foam is actually froth of air. The gas is dispersed in a liquid, so here it should be there. And gel means cheese. It is liquid dispersed in a solid. So we have A 2, B 1, C 4, and D should be 3. So option B should be the correct answer here. Next question. The correct order of reactivity of metals towards water is. So they have given 4 options where you have 3 elements, and for this you should be knowing the reactivity series order. Okay, so reactivity of metals with water actually depends upon their position in the reactivity series. Metals which are high in reactivity series, obviously they react more vigorously with water. Now if you go for the activity series, you have highest reactivity for potassium, then next is sodium, then comes calcium, magnesium, and aluminium. So if you are a paid class aspirant, then you will be knowing about all this. We have taught all this in the basic classes only. So if you see the options here, they have given 3 elements: sodium, calcium, and magnesium. So if you see the order, option B should be the correct answer. So highest reactive element is the sodium, then comes calcium, and followed by magnesium. Okay. Next question. There is a match the following here. You have to match first row to second row, and they have given you 4 options with the match the following. Okay. So here they are giving you sand and camphor. So sand and camphor are actually filtered in the process of sublimation. So basically this match the following is a processes of filtration, you can say. Okay. So this distillation, chromatography, separating funnel, fractional distillation, sublimation, all these are processes of filtration. So sand and camphor are filtered in the process of sublimation. Then you have acetone and water. So water means distillation should come into picture. Okay. So acetone and water fractional distillation. Pigments are always related to color, right? Color meant chroma. Here you can see chromatography. So this one. Then salt and water, again distillation should be there. Water and kerosene. So this is the most famous separating funnel, right? So here A is 5. If you see the options, in only one thing you have A as a 5. So this should be like this actually. I will write it again if you want. So it is A, B, C, D and E. Okay. So option A will be the correct answer here. Okay. So in any other options, if I had A is 5, then I would go and cross check again and again. But here it is easy for me because in only one option I have A is 5. So without wasting time, I will take it as correct answer because I am sure on A as a sublimation. But if you have doubt, then you can go for second one also. If you have doubt, you can go for third one also. And most matching answers, you can search and you can find out which option is the right one here. Okay. Next question. IUPAC name of the following compound is CH3, CHO, CH3, CH3. So they have given you 4 options. You should find out the IUPAC name of this compound. See, the parent chain is having 3 carbon atoms, right? 1, 2, 3, right? So what it should be? It should be propane. Then substituent attached at carbon number 1, 2 and 3. At carbon number 2, the substituent attached is OCH3. OCH3 is a methoxy group, right? Methoxy, right? So we have 2 propane methoxy or 2 methoxy propane. 2 methoxy propane. Option B will be the correct answer here. Next question. The bond energy for catenation next to carbon is, actually the bond energy is the highest for carbon. What is catenation means? It is the ability of an element to form long chains with itself repeating using covalent bonds. Now carbon can form the most longest chain. Okay, now this process or the ability of an element to form these long chains with itself using the covalent bonds, we call it as a catenation. Now the question is, the bond energy for catenation next to carbon is, see actually the highest catenation ability in the carbon is due to strong carbon-carbon bond energy. Okay, strong carbon-carbon bond energy. Now the question is, the first one, the highest catenation is there for carbon. The first highest is carbon. Which is the next one they are telling? Okay, so the bond energy for catenation next to carbon is they are telling. They are given you 4 options. Okay. Now first one you know with the highest one. Which is the second highest? See, the second highest catenation ability is for silicon. The rest ones like you have sulfur, phosphorus and nitrogen, they have much lower catenation ability because their bond energies are comparatively weaker. But the silicon is the next highest bond energy it is having, or that bond energy is the leading to the next highest catenation. Okay. Now these were the chemistry questions. Let's now move towards biology questions. The question is, the organism that breathes through its lungs as well as its skin is, see, frogs are the ones which breathe on land using lungs, and because they have moist skin in water, they use their skin to breathe in water. And this type of respiration where the organism is breathing through lungs as well as the skin is known as cutaneous respiration. Okay, so here in the options we have frog, which is the correct answer here. Human beings, we breathe with lungs only. Dog also should breathe with lungs only, and earthworms should breathe with the skin. It breathes with the skin only. Okay, frog is with both. Rest human beings and dogs, they breathe with lungs. Okay. Next question. Why do new phage particles not produce in bacteria during the lysogenic cycle? So this is a biotechnology question. So the question is, why do new phage particles not produce in bacteria during the lysogenic cycle? 4 options they have given. See, actually in the lysogenic cycle, there is a virus which hides quietly inside the bacteria's DNA. That virus is not destroying the bacteria or its DNA, but it is hiding in it. Why is it doing so? Means the virus is producing the repressor protein. This protein acts like a switch that keeps that virus sleeping. So that's the reason why the new phage particles or the virus do not produce or do not reproduce in bacteria, okay, during this lysogenic cycle. So repressor protein is the reason for that. So because of the presence of repressor protein in phage, the new phage particles are not producing in bacteria during the lysogenic cycle. Next, the animal that moves with just one large disc-shaped muscular foot. So there is an animal among the 4 options: earthworm, cockroach, snail, tortoise. That animal is moving with just one large disc-shaped muscular foot. What is that animal? Means it is actually snail. Snail is having one big flat muscular foot under its body, and it is using that foot to crawl. Okay, now how does it actually crawl? It crawls by muscular contractions, right? And it is also having a slimy mucus that is also helpful in moving. Okay. Next, question number 31. Which of the following is wrong about mycorrhizae? So 4 options are there. Actually, mycorrhizae are symbiotic associations between fungi and plant roots. We have discussed in one of our classes also. In I don't remember if it is IP class or basic class, but it is been discussed in the paid class. So which of the following is wrong about mycorrhizae? Means, see, you are asked to give the wrong information given in the 4 options here. Okay, so what I told about mycorrhizae, mycorrhizae is actually symbiotic association between fungi and plant roots. Right. Now, if you see the options, the minerals and water provided by fungus in roots, they induce growth in some plants. They act as biofertilizers. They are used in soil reclamation. See, for this type of question, even if you don't know what is mycorrhizae, option A, C and D are doing something similar, right? Option B is only something different from the other 3 options, right? I will explain it to you actually. So here the correct answer is option B only. See, the function of mycorrhizae is that they increase absorption of water and minerals, especially phosphorus. Because they are talking about fungi and plant roots, right? So absorption will be there only, right? And they also act as biofertilizers. They are also used in improving soil and making it useful again for agriculture and other purposes. So that's why option B is the wrong information about mycorrhizae. They don't induce growth in some plants, but rest of things are correct about mycorrhizae. Okay. Next, question number 32. Find out the different form of cell organelle from the following. So here they are telling that 4 options are there, which are the cell organelles only. But one is different form of cell organelle, it seems. That you have to find out. See here, actually, glyoxysomes, microbodies, and sparosomes. These 3 are types of microbodies or subcellular organelles which are involved in metabolic processes. But centrioles are completely different type of organelles. They actually help in cell division, right? Centrioles, remember, cell division, and they are actually helping in formation of spindle fibers, and they occur in animal cells actually, but they are absent in most plant cells. So that's why option D, centrioles, will be the correct answer here, because they are completely different organelles when compared to above 3 options. Okay. Next, one important question this is again. Guard cells of leaf stomata cannot photosynthesize because. What are guard cells actually? Guard cells are green cells and they contain chloroplast, but they do not do complete photosynthesis because they need some enzymes for that. Okay, so these guard cells, they are present in leaf stomata, still they are not able to photosynthesize. What is the reason? I told you, right, they need some enzymes for that. So what are the enzymes which help them with the photosynthesis? This is Rubisco and NADP. So here correct answer is option A. Because of the absence of Rubisco and NADP hydrogenase, guard cells in the leaf stomata cannot photosynthesize. In case they had this Rubisco and NADP dehydrogenase, then guard cells of leaf stomata could do photosynthesis. Now what is this Rubisco and NADP? See, Rubisco actually full name is ribulose 1,5-biphosphate carboxylase or oxygenase. So the acronym we call it as Rubisco enzyme. Now this is especially essential for Kelvin cycle in dark reaction and carbon fixation. And without this Rubisco, the guard cells cannot fix carbon dioxide into glucose. Talking about NADP, the full form is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. This NADP is a coenzyme which is used in photosynthesis, and it helps in carrying hydrogen and electrons in the plant during the light reaction to form glucose. Actually, they can make ATP from light, but they cannot make glucose. Okay, so remember, guard cells can make ATP from light, but they cannot make glucose because of the absence of this Rubisco and NADP enzymes. Okay. Another question from DNA only. Each restriction enzyme cleaves a DNA molecule only at. So we have to find out the place where the restriction enzyme cleaves a DNA molecule. What is a restriction enzyme? First of all, see, restriction enzyme means it is a molecular seizure, we can say, and it is used in genetic engineering, and they do not actually cut this DNA randomly. See, the work of restriction enzyme is to cut only, but they are not cutting the DNA randomly. First, they will be recognizing a specific sequence in the DNA. We call that a specific sequence as like a palindromic sequence it is. Palindromic means, see, for example, I will tell you about an enzyme, ECOR1. That ECOR1 is there, no? it cuts DNA only at one particular sequence like this, GAATTC. Okay, so if you read it ulta also, it will be like this, GTTAAG. Okay, so it will cut the sequence only if it is of this order, like that it is. Okay, so we call it as DNA palindrome. It is actually a mirror image. So remember that each restriction enzyme cleaves DNA molecule only at a specific nucleotide sequence, not anywhere randomly. Okay. Next question. This is a assertion and reason type question. It is talking about vision in animals. Statement 1 says that rabbit can see all the objects around it without turning its head. Statement 2 says that rat can see two objects simultaneously, one through its left eye and other through its right eye. So you have to follow the two statements and decide which option is correct here. So here understand that rabbits can see all the objects around it without turning its head, because the eyes in the rabbits are located on the sides of their head. So this gives them a 360-degree view. They don't need to turn around their head to see the objects. But rats, they can see two objects simultaneously only. One it can see through left eye and another through its right eye. Okay, so here both the statements are correct. So option A will be the correct answer here. Next question. Choose the correct sequence. Here they are talking about a pathway of filtrate flow. Where? In nephron. So if you have the figure in your mind, then you can easily say that first you will get a glomerulus, then you have a proximal convoluted tube, then Henle loop and a collecting duct. Option A will be the correct answer. See, for these type of questions, you shouldn't see options. They will confuse you. You should rather, you can just remember the diagram, or you can draw it roughly in the rough space. Then you will understand that first you have a glomerulus. From the options I'm telling you, have Bowman's capsule, but it is not there in the options, right? See, it is not there in the options in the first, right? So we are starting with the glomerulus only. So this glomerulus is actually playing the role of a filter. Here blood filtration will happen here. Then we have a proximal tube, PCT. Here reabsorption of nutrients, ions and water, all this will happen. Then you have a loop of Henle where the concentration of urine is taking place. Then you have the distal tubule. Then you have collecting duct. In collecting duct, final urine concentration and collection takes place. Okay. So this is the order. Glomerulus, PCT, loop of Henle, distal tubule and collecting duct. Okay. Next question. Which is correctly matched electron transport system in mitochondria? So they are talking about ETS in mitochondria. So which one is correctly matching? Mitochondria F1 particles inner membrane, mitochondria matrix, mitochondria cisternae or mitochondria stroma. See, actually this ETS is located on inner mitochondrial membrane where this F1 particles or ATP synthase particles are present. So that's why option A will be the correct answer. What about this cisternae, stroma and all that? Means, see, in cisternae you have a Golgi apparatus, not mitochondria first of all. And then talking about this stroma, this is actually found in chloroplast. It is not found in mitochondria. So this is a wrong answer. Anyway, transport system means F1 particles should come in your mind and option A will be the correct answer here. Okay. Next, the root of the plant is, see here the four statements are there. This is a easy question, but it's an important question. Okay. positively phototropic but negatively geotropic, positively geotropic but negatively phototropic, negatively phototropic but positively hydrotropic, negatively hydrotropic but positively phototropic. It looks tough, but it is very easy actually. See, roots, they are talking about roots. Okay, now roots, they actually grow towards gravity, right? They grow towards gravity, right? So they are positively geotropic, right? So where is positively geotropic? It is there in option 2. That's all, right? So this is one point is correct. Now roots grow away from light, right? So light is here, the roots are growing down, right? So the roots are growing away from light, so they will be negatively phototropic, right? So that is also there here, negatively phototropic. Then roots are growing towards water, right? Water is there below the earth, right? I mean below the land, right? So roots are growing towards water, right? You have H2O here, right? That means they are positively hydrotropic also, right? So where is positively hydrotropic? It is in option 3, but with that they have negatively phototropic. Yeah, that is also fine. Option 3 is also correct for us now. Okay. So option B, 2 and 3 will be the correct answer here. Okay. Okay, moving towards the next question. Following one is not correct match. You have to be careful here. They are giving questions of the scientist in biology, and you should match with their field. Okay. So father of bacteriology. Father of bacteriology is Antony van Leeuwenhoek. Yes. And father of modern taxonomy. So father of modern taxonomy is not D. Candolle, it is actually Carl Linnaeus, and it is very famous also. We have been telling about this in many of our classes. So this is the correct answer for this question, because they are asking about not a correct match. Rest, father of medicine is the Hippocrates, and father of classical taxonomy is Aristotle. Okay. Next question, question number 40. Choose the right pair which are affected by plague. So here we should find out which are the parts in the body which were affected by plague. So plague is actually caused by bacterium Yersinia pestis. Okay, Yersinia pestis. It is a bacteria which causes plague, and lymph nodes and lungs. Basically pneumonia we can say, like COVID only, more or less we can say. It had symptoms and all that, and it was such a severe that lakhs of people died during that time. Okay. Next, question number 40. Name the hormone which is at the peak during ovulation. So here we have 4 hormones: estrogen, FSH, LH and progesterone. See, actually ovulation means it is a process that happens in females. It is the process in which a mature egg is released from an ovary during the menstrual cycle. So this egg actually travels down the fallopian tube. There some fertilization takes place, and this is the time when a woman is most fertile. Okay. And in case this egg does not get fertilized, it will be disintegrating, and uterine lining will be shed. That is what is a menstruation, which happens in females every month. Now, what is the hormone which is at the peak during the ovulation? See, the hormone is, don't get confused by estrogen and progesterone. They are talking about the hormone which is peak during ovulation. It is a LH. The full form is a luteinizing hormone. We can expect this type of question this time. Okay, because one question they are asking from reproduction every time. Okay. So here, why I was telling you not to get confused with estrogen, because during the menstrual cycle, just before ovulation, estrogen level will be high. Now this estrogen levels which are high trigger the pituitary gland to release a sudden large surge of this hormone called LH. Now this hormone LH is only responsible for breaking the matured Graafian follicle and release the egg or ovum. Okay, so that is the ovulation process. So don't get confused with this type of questions. Okay. Next question. Which of the following is a tissue? So this is a very important question and very easy question actually. So the kidney, lungs, ovary, they are all you can say parts of our body, but blood is actually a connective tissue. Okay, it is a connective tissue. Next question. We have to do this match the following, and this match the following is related with events and plant parts or tissues. Okay. So here see carefully. Water absorption or absorption of water is done by root hairs, right? Then absorption of minerals is done by epiblema. Transport of water is xylem. Transport of minerals is phloem. Okay, so this is an important question. They can ask any one point also as a MCQ. So here remember, absorption of water is root hairs and absorption of minerals is epiblema. Xylem and phloem, so you will be knowing about it. So option D will be the correct answer here. Okay. So okay friends, this was the most expected list of multiple choice questions from science part. Now I will be discussing the you can say high priority questions. Okay, the most important questions from these expected questions you can say. Okay, so that list I will be giving you. Again, let me start with the physics. The question is the slope of a velocity time graph gives. So there is a velocity and a time graph. So if you have a slope, then what does that slope give you? It gives us acceleration. Remember, what about the distance time graph? It gives us velocity. What about the velocity time graph? It gives us acceleration. Okay, so how you will get velocity? You will get by distance versus time graph. Okay, next question. A boy of mass 50 kg climbs a staircase of height 4 meter in 5 seconds. Find the power. So what all they have given? They have given mass, they have given us height, they have given us time. We have to find the power. Actually, what is the formula for power? Power is equal to work done by time, right? But then they are talking about height here, right? So the boy is climbing. So potential energy can come into picture. It can be written as mgh, right? Work done can be written as mgh also. So upon time. So what is mass? 50 kg. What is gravity? Let us take as 10 for making it easy, because I have seen in the options there are nothing decimal points. So directly I am taking 10 as acceleration due to gravity. Height is 4 meter and time is 5 seconds, right? 5 ones are 5 tens are, so directly it is 400 watts. Option B will be the correct answer here. Okay. Next expected question. The dimensional formula of Planck's constant is, so this is an important question we can say. Actually, Planck's constant comes into picture only when we talk about E is equal to h nu, right? And with this, what will be our h or Planck's constant? It will be E by nu, right? E is energy, nu is frequency, right? If I know the dimensional formula of energy and frequency, then I can derive the dimensional formula for Planck's constant, right? So what is the dimensional formula for energy? ml2 to the minus 2. For frequency t to the minus 1. So for Planck's constant, the dimensional formula will be ml2 t to the minus 1. So the correct answer will be option A. But you may say, madam, how do we remember this dimensional formula for energy? It is tough for us to remember. In that case, you can derive the dimensional formula for energy also. Okay. So energy is equal to force into distance, right? Or you can also call it as work done. But what is force again? Mass into acceleration, right? So this distance again I will write it here. Now things became easy for us, right? Mass dimensional formula will be capital M. For acceleration, dimensional formula will be L1 t to the minus 2, and for distance it will be L1. So with this we get a energy dimensional formula as ml2 t to the minus 2. Now you may say, madam, how to remember the acceleration dimensional formula? That also you can derive. Okay, see, velocity is equals to distance by time. So you have L by t. So dimensional formula for velocity will be Lt to the minus 1. Acceleration is equal to velocity by time. Now you know the dimensional formula for velocity, right? Lt to the minus 1 by t. So acceleration dimensional formula will be Lt to the minus 2. Right? So that you can use here. And you can find out the dimensional formula for energy. Then again you can use the frequency in the denominator and find the dimensional formula for the Planck's constant. Okay, clear, right? So you should write down what is the value of Planck's constant in the comment section now. You can also write the units also. Let us see how much you have learned from our previous classes. Okay. Next expected question. The number of photons that pass through a unit area in a unit time is called. See the options: amplitude of light, frequency of light, intensity of light, more than one of the above, none of the above. See, actually when we talk about number of photons, means it should be intensity. Option C should be the correct answer here. What about amplitude? See, if there is a wave like this, in that wave, this distance, the peak, it will give you the height of the light wave, right? That is your amplitude. And how many waves are there? 1, 2, 3 and so on. That number of wave cycles per second, that will give you frequency. Okay. Intensity is number of photons that are passing through that particular unit area in unit time. Okay. Now let's see one chemistry question also. A substance X is used in whitewashing and is obtained by heating limestone in the absence of air. Identify that X. Okay, so there is a substance X which is used in whitewashing. With that only it should come in your mind. What is used in whitewashing? Calcium carbonate maybe, right? So something related to calcium is there in the answer. So here actually the limestone calcium carbonate CaCO3, when it is heated strongly, if you heat it, you will get calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. So this calcium oxide is actually called quicklime. So here the substance X which is used in whitewashing and obtained by heating this limestone. What is CaCO3? It is limestone. In the absence of air. So what is the product is the question here. So the product is quicklime or calcium oxide. Okay. Next, an example of metalloid. See, actually metalloid means it is such a element which is having properties between metals and non-metals. Okay. Now metalloids are usually, the best examples are semiconductors. So among these four options, which is a semiconductor? Only silicon, right? So sodium is a metal, neon Ne is a noble gas, sulfur is a non-metal. So silicon is the metalloid. It is actually semiconductor also, and semiconductors have lot of applications, right? They are used in computers, ICs, cells and all that, right? So option 3 will be the correct answer here. Then the last question of this marathon class. Most bacteria that cause plant diseases are members of the group of. So here you can see options. They are talking about rod shaped and gram positive bacteria, gram negative bacteria, then filament shaped and gram positive bacteria. So most bacteria that cause plant diseases, they are actually the members of rod shaped and gram negative bacteria. Remember this. Life sciences aspirants will be knowing about this. So rod shaped gram negative bacteria, they are the most plant infecting bacteria, and they belong to this gram negative type because no, they have a thin cell wall and there is a lipid outer layer. This helps them to survive easily there in the plants, and also they move easily in the plant tissues because they are having rod shape. Okay, so that's why option B will be the correct answer here. Okay friends, this was the science model paper with the 50 most expected multiple choice questions. So if you are a paid class aspirant, then I will be giving you this notes also. Okay, I'll give you this material because now you have very less time, so you can just read it out also, but it is always better to watch class. Okay, and if you are a free class aspirant, I hope that you have watched the center of this class and you are going to utilize all this information, which is going to surely help you in the exam. Okay friends, please do write in the comment section how did you like the class, and also we feel that many aspirants, because they were requesting for this class, we feel that many of you will be happy with this class. Thank you. All the best. Bye.